I'm Steve Lascalzo, and this is The Way. Andor, a Star Wars story, second season, episodes 1 through 3. This is the 4 BBY story arc, First Impressions podcast by This is The Way podcast. The first 3 episodes of the second season of Andor all debuted on the same day, Tuesday, April 22nd at 9 p.m. Eastern. The other 3 episode blocks are going to drop weekly until the finale is revealed May 13th. If this is your first time joining me for a podcast, thank you so much. You will hear my honest opinions on this channel, the reviews and worldviews of others in Star Wars social media circles do not influence me. I started this podcast to cover the brand new show The Mandalorian on the brand new Disney Plus streaming service, and yeah, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah? Good.
Now I'm several shows in, and today I'm talking about the first story arc of Andor's second season, so episodes 1, 2, and 3 of season 2. If you have not seen all 3 of those episodes, please stop now. I am going to freely talk about events of all 3 episodes in this podcast. If you're looking for episode-by-episode recap and discussions, those will come later. If you're just interested in episode 1's coverage, that will come later. This is going to be all 3. If you're ready to hear my impressions on the stories that we got on April 22nd, feet forward, hands on head.
On program.
Tony Gilroy, showrunner of Andor, is the credited writer for the first 3 episodes. They're titled 1 Year Later, Sigrona Tima, and Harvest. The director for this block of shows, and actually the next block as well, is Ariel Kleiman. This block of stories picks up around a year after the events of Rick's Road, which came at the end of season 1. It is now 4 BBY, and we even get that superimposed on the screen. I feel like I have to do this almost every time. If you need a refresher, though, BBY stands for Before the Battle of Yavin. So that's like BC, before Christ, or BCE, before the Common Era. In universe, they don't say BBY, and they didn't say BC and say 10 BC either. They didn't even start using Anno Domini, or AD, until about the 6th century in our universe. So, in universe in Star Wars, they probably say it's year 15 of the Galactic Empire. I imagine Palpatine would reimagine the calendar that way. The Battle of Yavin has yet to happen in this timeline. It occurs at the end of the first ever Star Wars movie, which would later become Episode 4, A New Hope, which follows Rogue One. At the time it was released, Star Wars was just Star Wars. I mean, that's not news to most diehard fans, but maybe you don't come from a background that has all that theatrical lore from a galaxy far, far away. So if you're not aware, Star Wars has a documentary segment that followed the first 3 episodes called Andor Declassified, and the first 3 episodes are covered by the episode of Declassified called Time. It is in the Andor tab on Disney Plus. It's on Extras. It's also on YouTube. Do not watch it unless you've already seen the first 3 episodes. But if you're here, then you probably have. So definitely watch it if you have seen all 3 of the episodes of season 2 so far.
Here we know the ending, therefore it's about how eloquent you can be on the getting there.
One of the first things I noticed was it does appear, at least for the first 3 episodes, we're going to get different theme music openings for each episode, just like Nick Britell did for season 1. Now, he's not on all of the episodes. Brandon Roberts is handling at least 10 of them, maybe more, I don't know. Nick Britell does get a little bit of credit for the original theme music, but I think based on the fact that there were 3 different theme openings for 1, 2, and 3, I think it follows that we're going to get new ones for each episode, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Episode 1 kicked off with a great sequence. I liked the dynamic with Cassian and Nia, the defecting scientist at the CNR facility. Cassian calms her down, reassures her. He even starts to play into the attraction that she seems to have, but it's as a distraction. You know, it's for her to get through what is surely the most dangerous thing she's ever done. It's just a regular day for Cassian, of course. How this woman was developed as a contact is never revealed, but I love how he fanned the flames of this rebellion in her. And it's obvious there are atrocities going on in places that we don't see, because how else do you get this person to betray such a threatening organization? The action sequence in the hangar was exciting. I liked him figuring out the TIE Avenger controls on the fly, literally. And the chase was good. Of course, it's an echo of other canyon chases that we've seen in Star Wars. It goes as far back in the timeline as pod racing, and as far back in our time since the trench run in the original Star Wars. Then we go to Mina Rao. I was a little confused at first by Bix's dream sequence with the Doctor, Gorst, from Season 1, but once I realized what was happening, it made sense. And thematically, too, when she looks in the mirror, and then later the Imperial officer does, I mean, it makes sense that there's this echo even in this first 3-episode arc. I was a little disappointed that it was Mina Rao and not Lothal that we were visiting, but that may have been tricky to get the story told with a larger or more populated planet like Lothal, and we've already visited it in Ahsoka in live action. So some people who have seen both shows may have been confused, and then they would wonder, hey, where's Ahsoka and Sabine? Well, not all Star Wars fans, but some, and maybe that's why it's an opportunity for a new planet. We get to see here where some of our heroes have ended up. Bix, Brasso, B2, Wilman Pak, Salman's son from the salvage business on Ferrix. There's also a new character, a love interest for Brasso named Talia. I know, short-lived, but he still gets one. Chandrilla being seen for the first time on screen immediately made me think of Lord of the Rings, like Rivendell. The design is very evocative. Circular doors, so it could be Hobbiton or something. It appeared to be an old but lavish residence like Rivendell. It befits the senator of the planet, but it feels like it's a family residence that's been around for millennia, and some of the art that we end up seeing support that. I did not recognize him at first, but Erskine, a character that we first saw, I believe, in Rebels, is in the sequence. That's Mothma's personal assistant. I got a little confused. It's not her driver, but this is her personal assistant, and that follows with the animated series Rebels, because he's there and he is loyal. I loved seeing the dynamic developing in the preparations for the wedding. There were a lot of people not getting what they really want in these episodes. Cassian doesn't get what he wants because he shows up and his contact is not there. And Mon Mothma's not getting what she wants from her friends, from her daughter, from her husband. Luthen's not getting what he wants because he wants updates, and Cleia's not getting what she wants, and Vel's not getting what she wants because she wants Cinta, and everybody seems to be not getting what they want. Bix, Brasso, need to hear from Cassian. B2 wants Cat. It just seemed to me to be the theme. Seeing Luthen show up at the wedding makes sense. I would love to know how it was done. Like, did Luthen reach out to Davo Skolden? Or maybe he had Cleia set it up so they could meet, and then he could pitch the Chandi Merle statue as a gift in order to get the invite. It's a melding of worlds here that adds to the stress that we see bubbling up for Mon. Gilroy masterfully puts all these pieces together, and he didn't have to waste a lot of dialogue or scenes doing it. Now, I was not a fan of the events on Yavin 4, and yes, it is Yavin 4 as we end up seeing when Andor ends up leaving, and it's further confirmed in those declassified episodes I talked about, or the one episode called Time. I realize they needed to park Cassian Andor somewhere since events needed to play out, and They didn't want him to just come rushing back home with the TIE fighter. I think Gilroy did a great job with this. So it's not that I didn't think it was well done. I just thought this was the weaker part of the story for me. The lone bright spots there were whenever Andor got a chance to lead from captivity. That develops character a little bit. It all made sense, too, from his capture and the death of his unseen contact, and then the splitting up of the group because of the stress of this power vacuum. It's just, the rock, paper, scissors stuff was a little silly, but so is Star Wars. People do crazy stuff when they're hungry and scared, and I didn't think it was that bad. This ends up being one of the first Rebel cells on Yavin 4, and that contrasts well with the base that we end up seeing there in Rogue One and A New Hope.
I knew it.
On the Imperial side, the Malphine Divide, I'm glad they named this, right? Because I absolutely would have assumed this was the place that the Bad Batch tried to infiltrate in Season 2 on Eriadu. I mean, it's possible that the Malphine Divide is a place on Eriadu, but I would think that they would just put that on the screen. I couldn't find anything except Andor Season 2 referenced when I searched for the Malphine Divide. Still super cool to see Krennic working behind the scenes, and the propaganda film about Gorman with the spiders, that really sold the World War II Axis of Evil kind of aspect to me. I mean, this might well have been the Eagle's Nest, right? Or what? It was very interesting to see Partagaz and Miro, they make the inner circle cut. The need to know cut of people. Because Krennic was talking about, like, even these people don't know, and they will only be brought in if they need to know. There was some weird small talk, and the contrast between the opulence of the officer lunch there, and then this Yavin 4 rebel cell that was starving, that was not missed by me. And then everybody was gathering around a picnic table on Mina Rao, and they were hard at work, and they had plenty, right? So there was a lot of contrasts going on. Miro's insights fit her character, too. It definitely felt like we're seeing this continuation for her from what we saw in Season 1. And this Gorman thing, this might as well have just been Samovar and Wadi Rafa, which are planets just like it from Rogue One Catalyst. That's a novel that told how Galen Erso and his wife were brought in to work on the Death Star. They weren't totally in the know, and then by the time Krennic had gotten his fingers into them, and they were working on this super weapon without their full knowledge, and then only later did Lyra realize, oh my gosh, they are terrorizing planets to do this, to harvest these kyber crystals. You'd have to read that novel to see this was a continuation of what Krennic was already doing, but I liked seeing it here. He's basically stripping a peaceful planet of resources, and then he buries the evidence. It might have also been done to Kenari, which is where Cassian was from, too, and we saw him taken from there. Now, not by the Empire, but, the atrocities of the Empire were just continuation of the atrocities that had been done during the Republic. Not everybody knew what was going on in the Republic because it was so corrupt. There was a ticking clock started on Mina Rao with the Imperial Supply Census. I'm not sure we needed one, a ticking clock, but maybe we do. Maybe I would have felt differently about this story since I felt like I did with Cassian on Yavin. The first night party on Chandrila was a great setup as well. Vel, Clea meet again. This time they can do it in public instead of secretly on Coruscant like they were in Season 1. Mon being assaulted on all sides. We get the first hint that Tay Kolma is starting to crack. And then Sigrona Tima is apparently a Chandrilan greeting. It's also the title of the second episode, where I immediately clocked this guy Kellen on Mina Rao as a future traitor. Now, this worked perfectly with the Tay Kolma stuff, I think. His concerns that he was voicing were all selfish ones. Like, I wonder how it's going to affect us on this planet. Brasso, Bix, B2, Willman, they're all waiting to hear from their friend, and we know why he's delayed. But they can't possibly know. So, in Kellen's mind, oh, he got captured and he ratted us all out. So that makes perfect sense to me. The efficiency of writing from Gilroy is what other shows in Star Wars have sorely missed, in my opinion. It was also fantastic seeing Cyril Karn spin a story to the new Bureau of Standards recruit. Just like he was introduced to the job in Season 1, now he's a supervisor. And after finding out that he was living with Dedra, I'm left to believe that this story about rooting out corruption is an example of him failing upward because of Dedra. So if this story that he tells is true, he was uncovering a cover-up to build the Death Star, right? I mean, all of that purchase orders and all this stuff, they were shuffling papers around in order to hide the Death Star. And since he was right, but also a problem, and living with Dedra, what better way to get him out of the way? Give him a management job, right? Now he's not digging in, he's supervising. So it probably isn't a lie. Cyril tends to bend the truth more than lie. So I really thought this was effective and great storytelling.
There's a future here for those who dare.
On Chandrila, the rehearsal dinner scenes were so good. And I know, I'm not being objective here. I just felt the way Luthen was acting towards Mon fits these characters so perfectly. Perrin's speech makes perfect sense. His attitude toward his powerful wife and her relationship with Tay isn't petty. Or it isn't just petty, I guess. It's prescient. He's paying attention. Kolma is the weak link in this chain. And I just don't think Perrin realized why his input was valuable here. Because if he's seeing it and Luthen Rael's seeing it and everyone else is seeing it, I think Mon Mothma has to confront herself or her own feelings and say, yeah, this is what's going on here. This is the episode also where Cassian escapes the infighting rebel cell, and then when he flies off, we see the telltale step pyramids of Yavin. And it makes sense when he's escaping, he finds the blaster pistol because he had been here a few days before. When he left a partner who is now dead. We hear about the different greetings in this episode and where the title gets the name, and that's all fine.
It is my Chandrilan duty to greet you, Sagrona. To toast your health, Sagrona Tima. A single truthful insight. Sagrona Tima Salom.
But it's harvest in episode 3. This is where we get the juicy stuff, right? Blue Harvest was the production name for A New Hope, of course. Mon has her talk with her daughter in the Hobbit room. That was really good. There's this disconnect with her daughter at a time when both probably long for some closeness. The elven wedding in Star Wars, maybe they did it better here than in Lord of the Rings. I don't know. There was a lot of circle symbolism and cutting of the braid, just like a Jedi Padawan's. That's not out of nowhere. Remember, from season 1, there was a lot of talk setting up Leia's conservatism. She really loved those traditions of Chandrila, and one of the lines that she talked about was like safe in the braid. She's enamored, and she believes in the romanticism that she's been brought up to believe by Perrin and maybe Mon Mothma. Maybe she also talked it up at one point. Mon Mothma believed in all of this at one point. She had an arranged marriage, and then, she grew up. She's being isolated like Tay Kolma is. He's got a divorce coming up, but her reaction to her isolation is really important to the story because she is where everything is starting to coalesce in the rebellion. I mean, if we didn't already know the story and where she ends up, we would be worried for her fate. And that's what's so amazing about this show is we know what happens. We know that Cassian Andor gets out alive because he's in Rogue One. We know Mon Mothma survives. She's in Rogue One. We don't know what happens to these other characters, though. It just fits so well into what we know is coming from Mon Mothma. Luthen's line, how it's so nice for her to not have to think about things that have to happen. That Tay's got to go. It's just so good how they do it. It's like, she doesn't want to face that fact, and he's there to tell her, like, he even asks her, would you have told me about all this stuff? And she's like, oh, yeah, I would have. Well, maybe she would. Clea, I just love this character so much. She finally gets to hear from Cassian, and this coded talking that they do, it's so great. I love that Cassian has a Luke moment here. I'm not waiting. I'm not sticking with this busted plan. I'm going to go save my friends. There's the Shandi Merle presentation of the statue, and we get to find out it was stolen by Rakatan invaders. That's right up Luthen's antique alley, right? The crystal that he had in Season 1 was rescued from the Rakatans. This is something out of Legends lore, but at least we're hearing about these things that are long, long ago, even to this story that is already supposed to be long, long ago. I just mentioned, earlier, Mon she had to grow up, right? The Dedra and Cyril and Edie scenes, those were a little rough to watch. Not because they were uncomfortable. They were just uncomfortable. They weren't tough to watch like the assault on Bix that we find out later, but it was hard to watch these scenes. I didn't like them. And then we see Dedra speaking up for Cyril. I didn't know we needed this. But the deference that Cyril was showing to his mom is now seen by someone outside that group. So she sees him as being delicate, but Dedra sees this deference that he's showing as something that she values in her man. I didn't like the scenes until Dedra ended up sticking up for Cyril. That was great. I did not like the assault of the officer on Bix. I did not want it in Star Wars. But let's not pretend that stuff like this doesn't happen on a regular basis in the world. Wouldn't be realistic. And yes, I know I'm talking about a fantasy show, but this had to happen. It's tough every single time this happens. But here, this is the sort of corruption from the real world we want to pretend wouldn't exist in our fantasy settings. But, it's done well. It's important. It proves that it's not just planet scourging that the Empire is doing. It also happens on a personal level. And it's heartbreaking and it's rough to watch, but thankfully, Bix prevails. It doesn't go too far. And what great acting from that officer, too. We're definitely going to have to focus on him when we get to the episode by episode recaps and discussions. His stumble after being hit, the stunt acting when he falls down, superb. The Neomos mix. It makes a reappearance from Season 1 at the Chandrillon wedding. That was pretty interesting. This music is basically a hit across the galaxy for a full year. I noticed it right away, and how could you not laugh about this? They're all dancing, and then seeing Mon Mothma dancing out the stress, like, it really felt like she was letting go in the midst of all this stress that she was under. And then seeing Cinta and Vel recognize each other on the landing pad. What must have been going through Vel's mind there? She's seeing Cinta for the first time in a while. She knows how dedicated she is to Luthen's ideals, but then she also has to realize, like, oh wait, Tay's gonna be dead soon. It all worked so well. And now we have to wait a week to see what happens to all these characters in a year's showtime, because it's not just going to pick up with Tay Kolma being killed. We're going to skip a year.
You think anybody's listening?
I have no idea what's going to come in the 3 BBY story arc. I was a little surprised that everything that was happening seemed to be happening in those 3 wedding days. It's possible some of them were happening at a different time, but it really ended up, it could have just been called First Night, Rehearsal, and Wedding Day. But instead we got 1 year later, Sigrona Tima, and Harvest. Now you can't use 1 year later again, right, for episode 4. Episodes 4, 5, and 6, we know there's going to be an update with Gorman, because we don't get the Gorman massacre, I think, until 2 BBY. So in Rebels Season 3, that's when Mon Mothma speaks out about the Empire. So I'm guessing the massacre has to happen sometimes in episodes 7, 8, and 9. 4, 5, and 6 are 3 BBY, though. That means we don't have the Rebels crew yet, probably, because unless we see something outside of Mon Mothma's point of view, we don't ever come across Luthen with the Rebels crew. We don't have Thrawn accessible yet through Rebels, though he could start being mentioned. Now, I don't think Tony Gilroy is going to use him, but again, there might be some characters like Callus that serve a purpose in the story, and it's going to be interesting to see how those all weave together. I really liked the first 3 episodes. I did see discourse starting to form about the assault on Bix online. And I guess I'll talk about it here. Though I didn't personally like it, I don't agree with some of the people that are talking that it doesn't belong in Star Wars at all. Now, I definitely agree. I don't want to see this in a saga film, right? That's a younger audience. This show is a different tone. I feel like it's something I don't want to see. But then again, we're being told a story about conditions being bad enough for people to rebel against tyranny. And sometimes damaging nature is just not enough to get so many people to say, yes, what the Empire is doing wrong.
This is the message I was sent.
Okay, I'm choosing to respond here to a comment on our Season 2 preview podcast from YouTube. Someone complained, seriously? You have a title to this video and show nothing?
Uh-oh. It's not good.
All right. Well, the title says, This is the Way Podcast. It says podcast. And I understand many people like to watch video that goes along with what they're listening to when they watch a video on YouTube. But this is the way that I get my podcast to be on YouTube. It's not meant to be watched, but some people do. It's meant to be listened to. And I know there are people out there that do it with video, and they do it on camera. But I don't want to take the chance that all my hard work on research gets struck down for copyright. Disney is out there. I mean, I even have to test out some of the audio that I want to use before I create a whole podcast and then have to go back and re-edit. I already get struck for fair use. And it's a lot of work to constantly be fighting with YouTube about. And I get it. There are plenty of outlets that use clips or stills. They figure out how to do it, and they don't suffer the strikes. But I'm not doing this for money. I can't afford to do it already. But those people who are doing that are using and figuring out workarounds because it pays for them to do so. I don't have a dedicated computer. I don't have software to rip video off of Disney Plus and then experiment with how to use it without getting Disney sending cease and desist letters. I get it. Others do it. I don't want to sit in front of a camera and read notes. I did on-camera work for television. I can tell you right now, I don't have the setup here. I could do it, but I don't want to do it. I have 2 little girls that constantly ask for time. I have a wife who interrupts me for very valid reasons in the home. I can't carve out 20 minutes of my time unless my wife is either out of the house during the kids' day at school or she, like she's doing now, isolating herself to her room. She's a nurse, so for 4 days out of the week, she gets to be home instead of on a 12-hour shift. I'm not going to tell her, hey, be quiet while I record for this podcast all the time. I'm not making money. People aren't listening to my podcast in great numbers, let alone watching them. So maybe you're right, guy or girl. Maybe doing video would be better. I tell you what, you promised me $50,000 a year so I can make that case, and maybe I'll build a home set. Deal? No? All right then. This is what I got for now. Thanks for the feedback, though. You actually beat out a long-time listener who I was going to be featuring in this podcast, but now I'm just going to wait and feature that email until the 7, 8, and 9 2 BBY block that comes up in a few weeks.
We shall see.
Hey, I said I'd include discussion. I didn't say I would be nice about it. If you want to be part of the discussion, you can send feedback or comments to This Is The Way Podcast email address, thisisthewaypodcast@gmail.com. Obviously, you can leave comments and I'll see them, like on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, X, or YouTube. That can work. It just did, right? But if it's not about production value, maybe email is the best. Thank you for listening to this First Impressions podcast on Andor Season 2 4 BBY story arc covering episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the second season. I'm your host, Steve Lascalzo, and this is The Way. May the Force be with you, always.